song, "O Little Town of Bethlehem," was actually written in 1868. Reverend Philip Brooks, an Episcopalian priest, was in Bethlehem in 1865. And he experienced Christmas in Bethlehem. And it moved him. And it was an experience he said he never forgot, that it was so special. And 3 years later, he went to his music director, and he gave him a sheet of paper, and on it was a poem, "O Little Town of Bethlehem." And he said to the music director, "Next week, I'd like for you to put a tune to this." And anyway, the man's name was Mr. Redmond, Lewis Redmond. And Lewis said, "Sure, I'll be glad to." You know, music directors really love ministers, especially when they walk in like that. And so he said, "Sure, I'll do it." Well, it was Wednesday, and Reverend Brooks went to him and said, "Have you finished it?" And he said, "Well, not yet. No, I'm getting to it." "Friday, have you got it finished?" "No, not yet, but I'm going to get to it." It's Saturday. Reverend Brooks goes to Lewis's house and says, "Have you finished it? Because I want to hear it." He said, "No, but I'm going to do it before tomorrow morning." And he said nothing would come to him. And he wanted to please Reverend Brooks. And he wanted to work and get this piece out because it was such a beautiful poem, but no music came to him. And then he said what happened was he finally, in exhaustion, went to bed. And he woke up about 2 hours later with a tune in his mind. Now, you guys know what I'm talking about. Many of you have experienced something like that in different ways. That intuitiveness, that inner voice. And what he heard was the tune to "O Little Town of Bethlehem." And so they sang it for that special Christmas service. And it was the first time it was ever presented. And the two of them figured it would disappear. It was no big deal. And a person was sitting in the congregation who owned a bookstore. And so he asked if he could print that and sell it. And so he started to print it and sell it. And eventually it was distributed. And eventually, finally, in the late 1800s, around 1890, 95, it was printed in a hymnal for the first time. And it's become, over the years, a traditional Christmas song. "O Little Town of Bethlehem." Obviously, they didn't have Facebook or iTunes or anything like that then, or otherwise it would have taken place much quicker. But it did take a few years, but he got there. And it's a beautiful song, and as a matter of fact, the first name to it, Lewis Redmond, was St. Louis, they called it for a while, until it was finally called "O Little Town of Bethlehem." Valerie Kay is an intern here. She's not able to be here today. She's actually in Detroit and was going through some testing that they go through to become a minister. She's, again, just about finished with everything. And she wrote these words, and I want you to hear it this morning, and then we will figure out, and you should have had a blue insert that has the words on it, because she's going to ask you to join her in singing this as we move forward with the service. Thank you. So let's go, Pam.
O birthplace of my consciousness, how still you are inside. Above thy deep and dreamless sleep, the light of God shines bright. In dark streets of the mind is the everlasting light. The doubts and fears of all the years give way to great insight. How silently the wondrous gift is given. Beginner's mind and childlike heart bring forth divine expression. The bread of life sustains me with everlasting worth. The purest thoughts and words and deeds give birth to love on earth. Sing with me now. Oh, birthplace of my consciousness, how still you are inside. Above thy deep and dreamless sleep, the light of God shines bright. In dark streets of the mind is the everlasting light. The doubts and fears of all the years give way to great insight. How silently the wondrous gift is given. Beginner's mind and childlike heart bring forth divine expression. The bread of life sustains me with everlasting worth. My purest thoughts and words and deeds give birth to love on earth. All the years give way to great insight. How silently the wondrous gift is given. Beginner's mind and childlike heart bring forth divine expression. The bread of life sustains me with everlasting worth. My purest thoughts and words and deeds give birth to love on earth.
Thank you, Valerie Kay. And I did give Valerie Kay more than 1 week's notice, okay? I gave her 2 to do that. But anyway, she did that for us, and I appreciate it. You know, what I want to do this morning is to have you experience the Christ within you this Christmas. That's my wish for you. That Christ is born in you, if it's not already so, and it's there, but that you awaken to it, that you become aware of it. And so many of you have. Raymond Teague was a Unity minister. And when he was early into Unity, just beginning to come, his house burned down. His wife and his child were safe, but the house did burn down, and it was a real shock, a trauma to his system, as it would be with anybody. And so he went in to talk to his Unity minister because he was somewhat angry. He went through that denial phase, and then the anger phase, and then I want to give up phase, and just tried to deal with this thing, but didn't quite know how. They seemed to just hang in there and create some sense of depression. And the minister gave him a book by Florence Shen, who was a writer in Unity many years ago, on prosperity. And as he read the book, he read this affirmation: I cast this burden on the Christ and go free. I cast this burden on the Christ within me and go free. What a wonderful way. And he said over time that really helped him. And then as he moved along and became a minister, he continued to use that as things would come up, as challenges would come up. I cast this doubt onto the Christ mind, and I am free. Because you see, the Christ, through the power of love, overcomes any fear, any concern. It doesn't mean that we don't feel things. It doesn't mean that we don't have pain sometimes. It doesn't mean that we don't feel loss. It just means that we can manage it and manage our ways through it. So, a few quotes. Emily Cady, in her book, Lessons in Truth, says, a definite inner revealing of the reality of an indwelling Christ, through whom and by whom come life, health, peace, power, all things. She's saying everything comes from the Christ with us in the way of power, in the way of peace, in the way of health, in the way of life. Myrtle Fillmore, our co-founder, said the light of the Christ mind enables one to see all things in right relation so that peace can prevail. We get in alignment with who we truly are. We get in alignment with that which created us. We get in alignment with life itself. And when we are in alignment, we can be that light, we can be that power. Paul says that through God's Spirit within, we may have the power to comprehend with all the saints what is the breadth, length, and height, and depth of all that God is. Wow. We can comprehend all of that. It is within us, but it's not outside of us. So this morning I thought about this, and what I want to do is, even though we're talking about O Little Town of Bethlehem, I don't want to concentrate on Bethlehem. I don't want to concentrate on a message that comes about Bethlehem. What I want to do is concentrate on the message from Bethlehem. And so I'm going to read a little different story about Christmas and about what might be called the first Christmas. And it's not in Luke, and it's not in Matthew. It's in the Gospel of John, the first 5 verses. In the beginning was the Logos, and the Logos was with God, and the Logos was God. God was in the beginning, our Logos was in the beginning with God. All things come into being through him, and apart from him nothing came into being that has not come into being. In him, in the Logos, was the life, and the life was the light of men. And the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness did not comprehend it. What that is another Christmas story, if you think about it. It's the birthing of the Logos, and that means the mind within each of us, which we call divine mind in unity. It's talking about the ideas that we have, and we call those divine ideas of what we can become and who we are and what we are. It's talking about that idea of divine expression, that as we express it, everybody doesn't comprehend it. But you know, more and more and more people are doing it today than ever before. They're comprehending, and they say it in different ways, that the Christ within is the power within each and every one of us. It's not out there somewhere. It's in here. And so looking at the Gospel of John is the gospel where you find the I am statements. One of the things I love about I am statements is when you say I am, you can't say Jesus is, you can't say that person is, you can't say God is. I am. I am the light of the world. And so the Christ within provides the illumination to others of peace, of love, and of joy. I am the gate. And what that means is that through this vessel that has been created over time to be that which can reflect God and express God, through this vessel, I am the gate. The gateway for the Christ to come into the world and be in the world and be in my life. And make a difference in my life and in the world. He said, I am the good shepherd. I am the good shepherd. And what that means is when wolves, if you would, are challenging us in practical way and different ways of negative thought, that what we can do is we can face that consciousness, we can center ourselves in the presence and power of the Christ, and when we do that, it washes away, it literally pushes away, it literally dissipates anything that I think can overwhelm me or I think cannot take place through me. I can find the possibility to move forward when I don't really want to. I can find that possibility of saying yes to life, even if I think life is saying no to me. So I can step into that idea. I was at a physical therapist's office the other day. They're working a little bit on my neck because it doesn't go as far as I want it to in rotation. And I told some of the physical therapists here, they're really mean people. You know? I mean, they hurt. But anyway, it was while he was yanking on my neck, he was asking me what I thought about the resurrection. And I'm going, huh? And I didn't want to disagree with him because I didn't want him to, really pull too hard. But anyway, and I said, well, he asked really how unity feels. And I said, unity and the resurrection, I know this sounds like an Easter message, but anyway, I said, unity sees the resurrection for some differently, and some believe that it happened. I don't really know. What I think is really important is that the Christ, the presence of God, resurrects within us each and every day. And he didn't seem to yank my head any further, so I don't guess he disagreed totally with me, okay? But that's what we're really saying here, is that I am the resurrection and the life. When I resurrect and allow the Christ to resurrect through me, I become life itself. Others see a difference. Others feel a difference. Others express that they feel a difference. It's happened to many people here. And if it hasn't happened to you, it can. Because the Christ within is a resurrection of light itself, of love itself, of peace itself. I am the way and the truth and the life. We're really taught not to say that about ourselves. We can talk about Jesus, but not us. But each of us is the way. We each have our own individualized way to know God, to express God, to be God. We each have our own individualized way in which we come to the truth of our being, understand that truth, step into that truth, and use that truth so that we make a difference in the world. That's what we're here for, is to support and serve one another. We can use books and go to classes and do all kinds of things. And what happens with many of us, I know it did at me at first, is I intellectually start to reason this makes sense. But I don't experience it at first because it's all intellectual. And I have to jump out of the intellect into faith itself to understand and experience that, yes, the Christ lives within me. And the Christ lives within you. As a matter of fact, the Christ is within each and every person. We say that. Showing up as unconditional love. And so, as I understand that truth, I then start to understand, literally, that the kingdom of God is within each and every one of you, each and every person on this planet, and myself. The kingdom of God. The kingdom of heaven is expressed when we step into and become the kingdom of God, which means that we align with truth itself, with the truth that Jesus taught. That's what we can experience at Christmas, the truth that Jesus taught. And it was also said, I am the true vine. And what that means really to me is that unless I stay spiritually nurtured through times of meditation, through prayer, through discussion, through reading sometimes, unless I'm willing to do that, I kind of, fall away sometimes. I don't stay quite in alignment. But then when I stay in alignment with the Christ conscious within, with God expressing through me, I then know that I am the true vine, expressing as the Christ. Now, the wonderful thing is that no matter what spiritual path we take, although we have different words for God, different words for the Christ consciousness, different way, divinity, different words for the Buddha, even though we have that, it's all one. It's all the center of who and what we are. It's the center of every individual. It is God's gift to each of you, to the world, and to us, that we can recognize and know who we are and what we are. That we can step into the Christmas experience and experience God in such a way that we feel totally, totally alive. You've heard this many times, probably. Certainly if you've been around a church. Christ in you, the hope of glory. Christ in you, your hope of glory. You know, what this verse shows is that Christ is in us in a particular way as our hope of glory, as our ability to understand there's more than what we see today, that there's more in life. There's more in life in such a way that we experience and we step into it and we experience the Christ. We experience God. Oh, not the God out there, the God in here. A God that is principle, unconditional love. A God that is principle, wisdom. A God that is principle, understanding. A God that is principle, always spiritual, working through you and me as spirit. And as we come to understand that, what happens is we make room in our hearts for that Christ, and we open our hearts to that. You see, the Christ who lives in us is our hope of glory. And this Christmas, allow yourself to go deeper, to release fear and loss. You're not going to forget it, but release it so it has no power over you. And you do that by casting any burden you might have on the Christ that is within you. And then you can go free, as Raymond Teague said. Share these affirmations with me. Say, I am the light. I am the light. I am the gate. I am the resurrection and the life. I am the way, the truth, and the light. I am the vine. The birth of the Christ in me is my hope of glory. My growth in consciousness. I now declare I am at peace. Merry Christmas.